Okay, now we're going to look at some editing commands, or firstly some drawing commands, polylines and donuts, and then construction lines, ray and multi-line and point, and then some modification commands, divide and measure and stretch, and last of all polyline. So to start off we'll go polylines. Polylines and donuts sort of go together. Now up on our draw menu we've been using lines, arcs and circles. A polyline is a bit different to a line. If we start drawing a line, it seems to behave the same way, excepting that you notice that it is a complete entity, like so. Whereas if we did the same thing with a line and drew lines and then selected one of those lines, it would be each one of those lines is individual. Now that's a big advantage when you come to doing three-dimensional work, because you want to be drawing a closed loop of lines that's one entity that can be extruded and it becomes a solid. Whereas if you extrude lines and as a closed group and they're not one entity, then they become a surface model as opposed to a solid model. So the other interesting thing about polylines is that apart from drawing lines, if we have a look at, now I'll just turn on my polar tracking, notice the options menu down here. While we're in the middle of drawing, we can actually switch to an arc and then switch back to a line again, and that is all one continuous entity. Now the other interesting thing about polylines, and one of the main things we use for in 2D drawing, is that we can change the width of the line. As it stands, it's described as having a width of 0, even though you can see it. So to change the width, we can go to W and it asks us for a starting width and a finishing width. So if we wanted to draw an arrowhead, for example, we could put in 5 as a starting width and 0 as a finishing width, and when we draw the next line it becomes sloped like that. So it's very handy for doing arrowheads on our perhaps a section view. So that's polylines. Now as I said, that is an entity. It's similar to a rectangle. If we draw a rectangle and if we select the rectangle, it's as though it was drawn in polylines. Now to get back from polylines to lines, if we explode it using the modify explode command, then it's as though we just drew it in lines and arcs. You can't go back the other way to, well, you can, I guess. The way to get from lines to polylines is there's a command called pedit, and it asks us to select a polyline. So if we select one of our lines, it says it's not a polyline, do you want to turn it into one? We'll just press enter on yes, and then we use the join command, and then we can select all of the lines in the group, enter twice, and now with a bit of luck that becomes one polyline. The only thing that would stop it becoming a polyline would be if there's a gap and it doesn't join in the group. Okay, so a rectangle once again is a polyline. If we were to go to a 3D view of this and use the extrude command and select that rectangle and extrude it and have a look at it in a shaded view, that becomes a solid. Whereas if we select this rectangle that I exploded, which is now just lines, and extrude that, you can see the difference. It becomes a surface model. So polylines are very useful for three-dimensional drawing. The other thing that goes hand in hand with polylines is donuts. just find it on the menu here, a donut. Great for electrical circuits. It's like a flattened donut. First thing it asks for is the inside diameter of the donut, and then secondly the outside diameter of the donut. This is defaulted to 0.5 and to 1, so I'll just press enter and accept that. It's going to create donuts now wherever I click. So if we have a close look at that, not terribly obvious. Let's make it a bit bigger. Draw donut. I should be able to press enter to repeat the command. Let's go for an inside diameter of say 20 and an outside diameter of 200. And I should be getting a gap in the middle. So those two together, if we draw a polyline and give it a thickness of, say, it always has to have a start point. We'll go for a width of, say, 10 millimeters, starting and finishing. So now we'll draw a thick line, which we can use, connect up to our donuts.